And it's tricky because also the mainstream media lies.
This basically she's proposing something like battle royale, but with commies.
That would be great. So it seems to me what's happened is they've had to bring in to try and quell the sort of threat from the further right. This is a funny one. Why are feminists not celebrating? Because she's the first female prime minister, right? But it never seems to work like that.
You want to let them know as soon as possible before things do get overwhelming. We're not in favour of this. You need to not do these things because it is always the slippery slope. It's the snowball where it starts off and then it turns into an avalanche.
いつもご視聴ありがとうございます。今回はおなじみイギリスの保守系メディアロータス・イーターズの4人アイディン・パラディン、ステリオ・スパナギオとハリー・ロビンソン、そしてニック・ディクソンが日本は本格的に保守回帰したのかというテーマで議論していたので、その模様をお届けしますね。話題は高市政権の誕生に始まり、参政党との関係、小野田公さんのこと、そして移民政策や多様性、左派リベラリストの矛盾と欺瞞へと広がっていきます。特に参政党との関係については、彼らが日本の外から見ているからこそ、国内のノイズ、つまり不要な情報に惑わされず、より俯瞰的な視点で分析しているのが印象的でした。この動画をご覧になる皆さんの中には、高市政権を支持する方、警戒している方、参政党を応援している方、疑ってらっしゃる方、あるいは全てを是々非々で見る方、本当にいろいろな立場の方がいらっしゃると思います。だからこそ今回は、それぞれの立場を超え、外から見た日本の保守を感じていただければと思います。ぜひ最後までご覧ください。それでは、どうぞ。
So, let's go to Japan and how based it is.
Yes, well, I've sort of, my working title is Has Japan Gone Fully Based? Because this is the question. Some people say it has with this new leader, and some people say, well, no, actually, that's a little bit of hype. So we'll look at the new leader, some of the Twitter responses, and some of the left not understanding the right's view on immigration in Japan. And they think we should, why they don't understand that we don't actually we want to respect countries' boundaries. Anyway, so we've got Sanai Takichi. I'm going to have to try and pronounce his name.
Sanai.
How is it?
Sanai Takaichi.
Thank you. This is going to be a problem throughout, but I'm just going to go to you for every pronunciation because I can't pronounce this.
We've got a house weeb now.
Yeah,
I'm incredibly English, and I refuse on principle to pronounce these names. So she has won a historic vote to become Japan's first female prime minister. She's known as Japan's Iron Lady because she's an admirer of Thatcher, but we'll get into why she's not necessarily that much like Thatcher because she's a sort of protege of Shinzo Abe. Is that close?
Yeah.
He was, of course, tragically killed. She was a heavy metal drummer, so something in common with Harry, although you're not a drummer, you're a guitarist.
Still, I have respect for drummers.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And Trump, of course, hailed her as a highly respected person of great wisdom, total wisdom. So, and that actually, there's some connection there as well because she used to be a talk show host as well as a heavy metal drummer. They're just some little factoids. But she's not completely on board with like Thatcherite policies. So this is a little bit more about her here. It tells to meet Japan's drum-playing Thatcher-loving first female prime minister, and it talks about how she actually is into kind of the Abenomics, the big spending and cheap borrowing. So it's not necessarily like a Thatcherite economic policy. And she's a hawk on foreign policy. It says she's been a regular visitor to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, is that close? Which is the shrine that honors Japan's war dead. And that's quite, not just the Second World War dead, but going back to the 19th century. And some people find that controversial.
She's a Maiden and Deep Purple fan. She's got my vote.
Yeah, exactly. And she used to be a heavy metal drummer. I mean, that's pretty wild. Quite Japanese. And there it says she was a television host. Now, she has also called for restrictions on the country's self-defense forces, which are forbidden, of course, from having offensive capabilities. This kind of thing. So she is on the right, of course, but is she as right-wing as everyone says? That's what I'm wondering, because she's partly there to hold the Sansito, is that right? The actual so-called far-right party at bay.
Is this basically she's proposing something like battle royale, but with commies?
That would be great. I'm not quite sure it is fully that, because really, partly she's there to sort of hold at bay, kind of like the Tories are trying to hold reform at bay or something like that. These guys who are Sansito, who are the actual right-wing party, who, as it says there, they went from 1 seat to 14 seats at the last election, and they were very much on an anti-immigration vibe. They said it's built its platform on a nationalist Japanese first agenda, warning against a silent invasion of foreigners. And they came, as it says here, from the 2020. The party was born in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, where it gained prominence with YouTube videos that spread conspiracy theories about vaccination. So probably just means told the truth about the vaccine. And also, they talk about how their response to the situation with immigration in Japan. And if you don't know, it's hit a record 3.8 million at the end of 2024. It doesn't say in any of these articles, but I've heard net migration is up to just over 150,000 a year, still way below ours. But for Japan,
I mean, that's not what you want.
No. And so the figure in 2024 was a 10.5% increase from the previous year. So now immigrants make up 3% of the country's total population. And tourists also hit an all-time high of 36.9 million. So Japan's not necessarily thrilled with all of that. And as this points out, Japan has traditionally been wary of immigration, but faced with an aging population, the government has eased immigration laws in recent years in an effort to boost manpower. So after Abe, there was all this sort of more globalist stuff, and they're like, oh, we need immigrants. Of course, people are upset about the new levels of immigration. So Sansito's growing. So it seems to me what's happened is they've had to bring in Takeichi, is that close? Yeah. To try and quell the sort of threat from the further right. And so, anyway, that's the basic overview of what's happened.
この件に関しては、高市早苗さんを熱烈に支持している、京都大学特定准教授で文芸評論家の浜崎洋介さんも同じようなことをおっしゃっていましたね。
参政党現象、いろんな評価あると思うけど、あの参政党現象がなかったら多分今回の議員票は高市さんに入ってなかったと思う。つまりまだ新次郎でやっていけるっていう雰囲気も濃厚にありましたよ。だけども、これみんな言ってたし分かってると思うし、バカじゃなかったらセンスがあったら分かると思うけど、あれで新次郎選んでごらんな。絶対次負けるよね。ここは直感できると思う。
And Twitter is responding with a mixture of misinformation and banter, as you expect, and some good points. This is a funny one. Why are feminists not celebrating? Because she's the first female prime minister, right? But it never seems to work like that when it's... they never celebrate the Thatchers or the...
Maloney.
Yeah.
They say frequently that they're not real women.
Right.
Whereas the left are so famous for supporting real women.
So that was just a funny tweet that was kind of random. But lots of claims about whether they're actually doing mass deportations. So Basil here says Japan got to 3% foreigners and elected a hardline conservative determined to preserve their country by deporting invaders. Meanwhile, in Britain, we're soon going to become a minority in our own country, and if you complain, you're arrested. Well, that part's true. Not quite true, because in a way, it's not really accurate that Japan elected her, because it's really a leadership election. So the LDP, her party, has been in power pretty much since 1955, right? It's set for two periods, 93 to 96. And I think 2009 to 2012, but it's basically been in power the whole time, right? So this is, it sounds like you know more.
It's essentially been a one-party state in terms of functional practice. Yeah, so but they have changed out how their leadership works and the directions that they go with the party over time. But it is kind of bizarre from the outside perspective, it's easy to put on, allusions to Trump has been the main one, right? But this is the same political party, just keep on trucking as it has been, just a change of leadership.
Yeah. But so is it a change like slightly to the right to address the threat of the right in Japan, but while maintaining the same party? Is that right?
I mean, from my understanding, it looks like it's a reaction to that for sure.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of things that have inspired a lot of fear in people regarding immigration. I know there was that little story that scared people for a while just a couple of months ago, where it was something about how Nigerians were going to be given free housing in little Nigerian villages in Japan, and that turned out to not be true exactly. But that was something that they were discussing, essentially, of building these like little Nigeria towns. It was in it for a what did they call it? A sister country program.
How do you even float that idea? I can understand the concern if these ideas are even being floated.
They went out and protested,
especially because Japan has all the evidence for why they don't want mass migration into their country by just simply looking west.
And they wanted like maybe a couple people, a handful to be cultural ambassadors or something. I don't know exactly, but they were not going to mass import people. However, the people went out into the streets and mass protested over it.
I think that's good, because whether or not those are the ideas actually being bandied about, you want to let them know as soon as possible before things do get overwhelming. We're not in favour of this. You need to not do these things, because it is always the slippery slope. It's the snowball where it starts off and then it turns into an avalanche.
Yeah, and there was a very negative reaction to that. So
the other person who is being talked about a lot is Kimi Onoda, another attempt at pronunciation. And And there's sort of these claims going around on Twitter that she's sort of in a ministry dedicated to mass deportations, which this tweet claims. But then a community note says, no, she's actually been tasked with handling issues related to ordinary coexistence with foreigners and immigration. And so it's probably not quite true. We want this sort of based mass deportations department.
It's exaggerations. A lot of it sounds like people just getting excited rather than intentionally trying to spread misinformation. I think it's the same thing that happens over here. Like when Boris got in, it was like, he's going to get Brexit done. Right. Britain's going to be so back. It's not necessarily because these people were bad actors. It's because they got caught up in the media storm and got really excited.
And it's tricky because also the mainstream media lies. So I'm trying to find out what's the truth. I mean, so their paper, the Morning Sun in translation, has this from about Anoda. It says that she it doesn't say that she's doing mass deportations, but she does say crimes and disruptive behaviour by some foreign nationals, as well as inappropriate use of public systems, are causing anxiety and a sense of unfairness among Japanese citizens. I can't imagine what that's like.
Wouldn't know.
Yeah, so she's talking about reducing crime and misbehaviour of foreigners, quote. She was born in America, and then she moved to Japan at age 1, so she's kind of like the Kemi of that. You know how Kemi is obviously British. She's American, even though she can't speak English that well because she moved back at 1. And this is just a fairly silly tweet saying white father abandons her and her mother moves back to Japan. Yeah, we get rid of all the gaijin. So that's what that tweet's claiming.
Irish American father, typical Irish behaviour.
But anyway, so this claim of whether she's actually doing deportations, Newsweek say no. They say it's a false claim about spreading online that she wants to do mass deportations. They claim it's not true. They say instead, immigration was a central theme in Takeichi's political platform, with the hardline conservative calling for a crackdown on illegal immigrants and foreign nationals who overstay their visas. She also raised concerns about unruly behaviour and last month claimed foreign visitors had kicked sacred deer in Nara Park, a popular tourist site. They're kicking the deer, basically, is what she said. Imagine that. That is terrible. So they have these, if you don't know, you probably know, but they have these sacred deer. They're thought to be like a connection to the spirit world historically, and they're also particularly nice because they bow to tourists, which they've sort of evolved to do over years. These deer bow at everyone, and apparently they were being kicked by foreigners.
Yeah, nondescript like you, foreigners, yes.
Right.
Yeah, so the point is there is like a sort of concern about these things, but it might not be mass deportations. It says neither the Prime Minister nor her cabinet has made statements pointing to a plan to deport foreigners en masse. Likewise, no mention of a deportation-related ministry can be found on the website of the Prime Minister, though it does list a minister in charge of a society of well-ordered and harmonious coexistence with foreign nationals. So good luck with that. Anyway, so that was just a sort of overview of all that. Are they doing mass deportations or not? Don't know, but maybe they're sort of somewhat based. And it's quite funny watching the left try to understand what's going on, because someone put here, I don't think she is far right, but they've said far right politician has become Japan's first female prime minister. And then Evan Loves Wolf replies, it's funny seeing white right wingers celebrate this. She hates you too. And then
she probably doesn't.
The left struggles to understand it's not always just about imposing yourself, because all their values are just about imposing themselves. Like, oh, women should be in men's spaces. Oh, men, like men's clubs, for example, men should be in women's spaces when it comes to the trans issues. Like, oh, we should be in every country. It's like, what about no? Why is it always about pushing yourself?
No, let me tell you what it goes back to. It comes back to, no, Dad, it's not my bedtime right now. That's what it always comes back to. No, Dad, I need that Game Boy Advance. No, Dad, I need this. It's being told no by their parents.
Right, boundaries. And they really struggle to grasp this idea. There was a really interesting tweet.
Yeah.
So he says, Japan is some guy called Samit. Japan is an incredible place to live. The good massively outweighs the bad, but be prepared. There are still random moments of racism. I've been yelled at for stealing their women while holding my wife's hand, called a POS foreigner just walking down the street, and even had police called on my shop despite paying taxes, pension, and running a legitimate business. We've had to show CCTV footage proving we weren't making a noise at 4 a.m, and someone even filed a report claiming a foreigner is running a shop of stolen cars. Japan is amazing, but living here as a foreigner can feel like playing life on hard mode. Most people who visit for a week never see that side. Still, I love Japan and the life I've built here over the past 10 years. Thank you, Japan.
Hate to break it to you, mate, but like all of those things are immune reactions and a sign of a healthy society that respects itself.
I posted something slightly less like hardline version of what you just said, and they just the amount of stuff I got in the replies, like, are you insane? Like, what are you saying? That racism's good? I'm like, I respect Japan's right to be Japanese. They can't grasp
and they have a strong, definitive sense of themselves and who they are. And also, I think this happens a lot in the West. We look at the society that Japan has built, and we have a great respect for it because, unlike so many places in the world, they're civilized.
I mean, if your entire
great
philosophy
country, great
is
people.
whatever helps me is the right thing,
yes,
you're going to end up with shitty takes like this.
Right.
I'm not expecting to impose myself
There is
on
something
them.
so arrogant. Gone.
Even what he described is so minimal. Like I was caught the POS foreigner. They didn't even call him something really offensive like barakusai, which means butter stink. And it's actually considered, I've brought this up before, I've talked about it because it's an interesting little tidbit. Non-Japanese people are more likely to have this one allele that causes them to have a very particular smell to the Japanese. So they call it smell pollution. So this is actually pretty friendly for them to say of him, you know.
Wow.
No, you don't get to go over there and impose yourself on them. Sadly, we're not an imperialist empire anymore. And even if we still were, Japan is not the place that I'd want to be like imposing ourselves on.
What I want Japan to be as racist as possible. If I went in a restaurant in Japan,
But they say that white people who move to Japan longitudinally become enforcers of other Westerners more so than Japanese people themselves, because the Japanese tend to be very polite and have a lot of societal norms and rules. So instead it becomes the people who have actually immigrated there, and it's very difficult to actually move there and get citizenship. It's very difficult. It ends up being other Westerners who police their own when they go over and act foolish.
I'm
I've
sure
heard
they
that.
don't want them to ruin it.
I mean,
Right, exactly, yes.
funny.
They know what they've got, I guess.
I mean, when we're talking about different places, we can always talk about culture and, you know, evaluate each particular norm. And whether you like it or not, what we have to respect is that they have the will to maintain themselves. I think that's what the average right-winger likes about this.
yeah, that is.
And that's what I respect. And
it's
that's what I
ultimately-
think the average right-winger respects. It has nothing to do.
But it is Japan. It's so clearly Japan, and everywhere. Why can't everywhere just be? Why can't Norway be Norway and Japan, and Nigeria be Nigeria? Why do we want this slop of it?
It's more like I'm asking myself, would I want the governments of the Western world do what Japan?
Yeah,
We're thinking in terms of us being citizens in countries with ridiculous governments who are not acting well.
Yeah, and it's you're espousing sort of nationalism over globalism and saying we don't want everything to be this sludge, everyone mixing together. It's great that Japan's Japan. It's so different. They've got amazing architecture and all these things you could cite. Everything mixed together. We don't, but some people do. I suppose if you want to be imperialist about it and you want to, it's kind of an imperialist mindset actually to go over and conquer somewhere, isn't it? And say
To
you should
impose
accept-
yourself, so you need to accommodate me.
Yeah. So we're agreed on this, but anyway, basically what we're saying is this: it's effed up how tolerant the racist community is. They don't even care what race you are as long as you're being racist. That's the cynical take on what it is. Of course, it's not. That's the comical take.
As cringe as that can be, sometimes that sentiment of wholesome chungus, inclusive racism, it is true. A lot of the time, it is true. It doesn't come from nowhere.
いかがだったでしょうか。今回の話で印象に残ったのは、やはり右から左へと幅の広い自民党という組織は海外的には少しキーに移っているのかなということです。石破政権に対する猛バッシングの末に誕生した高市政権。相変わらず批判的な態度の大手メディアとは裏腹に、SNS 界隈ではちょっとした高市ブームのような雰囲気を感じます。ただし、過去30年の日本の経済の停滞、そして実質上の移民政策を始めた自民党であることには変わりません。海外の方々が称賛してくれている日本。この美しい日本を守るためには、やはり私たちは期待感に流されることなく、常に冷静な目で政権の動向を見つめる必要があるのかなと思いました。決して盲目的になってはいけないなと。皆さんはどうお感じになりましたか？ぜひコメント欄で共有してくださいね。立ち上がれ、日本人。ご視聴ありがとうございました。